Thank you, Lee. Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. My name's Oliver Heath. As Lee mentioned, I have a variety of roles. But today what I'd like to do is to talk to you about the benefits that good design can bring to the workplace environment. In particular, I'd like to talk to you about a new frontier in sustainable design, one focused on a human-centered approach, health and well-being, and in particular, biophilic design. A style that has been scientifically proven to improve many of the spaces that we live and work in. So I'd like to explain what biophilic design is. I'd like to show you some examples, the key principles behind it, and also to reveal some new research that's recently been brought out by Carpet Manufacturers Interface about the benefits of bringing biophilic design to the workplace. And I guess I'd like to start off that, many of us can feel quite skeptical that design has the ability to really improve the workplace. I'm probably as guilty as many on TV of sort of showing that design is sometimes seen as an additional extravagance, and that sort of demonstrating its worth can be quite a tricky thing. But what we see with this evidence-based approach is that there are tangible benefits to using biophilic design ethos, the biophilic design ethos, to create a better workplace. Essentially, what I'd like to do is to demonstrate to you by using this biophilic approach, by strengthening the human connection to nature, that we can create workplaces where we can improve productivity, increase creativity, increase engagement and satisfaction, reduce absenteeism, and reduce the little-known science of presenteeism. But what I'd like to do first of all is to frame this discussion with some key facts. Now, 90% of us in the UK now live in urban areas. 85% of us work in urban areas. The World Health Organization states that the stress-related illnesses of cardiovascular disease and mental health disease are likely to be the two prime contributing factors to illness by 2020. So what we're seeing in effect is essentially a movement towards urbanization, living and working in urban areas, a rise in stress and a reduction in health. And as a result, you can draw a link between this disconnection between our contact with nature and natural processes and the spaces that we're living and working and the impact that has on our stress levels. It could be said that we're sleepwalking towards an ever more mechanized form of society where we have this great disconnection. But research over the last 30 years has demonstrated that by strengthening a human connection with nature, that we can realize all sorts of human benefits. Now, I'd like to start off in a kind of rather risky way, I'd like to say, by actually asking you all to shut your eyes. I want to do a little experiment. So, remember, this might feel embarrassing, but I'm the only one that can see you all shutting your eyes, and obviously I'm going to out anyone that isn't. But I'd like to do an experiment. So if you'd all just honour me with shutting your eyes and not falling asleep as well, that's kind of key. I know my voice is very calming. I'd like you to imagine for a moment that you've played the lottery and that amazing day has happened. You've won the lottery, and like many lottery winners, after opening some champagne and driving around on a speedboat, you've decided to build your own dream home. Now I want you to imagine that after many months of dealing with architects and designers, you've been handed the keys back for your home, and you walk through your home for the first time. I want you to walk to the window of your home and look out the window and picture what it is that you see when you look out of your dream home. Just get a mental image of that for a moment. Okay, now I'd like you to keep your eyes shut, but I'm going to suggest a series of things that I'm thinking that you're seeing. So would you mind, put your hands up if you see any of the following things, and keep your hands up until I ask you to put them down. So when you look out your window, do you see a large open area of sky? Do you see trees and grass? Do you see a large open body of water? Do you see plants and flowers? Keep your hands, put your hands right up, keep it straight. Okay, now open your eyes and just look around you. It's kind of amazing, isn't it? And it's really great that worked. Thank you. Why is it that we all have this utopian vision of our dream landscapes, the landscapes we're going to ultimately want to live in? Because we don't necessarily all have experience of living in those landscapes. As I said, 90% of us live and work in urban areas. So why is it we have this shared utopian vision? Well, I believe the answer lies in a science called biophilia, which quite literally means a love of nature. And it's a science that was first popularized by American biologist Edward O. Wilson in the 1980s, when he realized society's a movement away from rural areas into urban areas, and the many problems that we face when we found this dislocation with nature and natural environments. And as a result, he started a new school of thought. Now, biophilic design uses these ideas to create a series of principles to strengthen the human connection with nature. In particular, finding ways to use these ideas in urban areas and using them as a means to reduce stress, to reduce heart rate and blood pressure levels, to introduce and strengthen that human connection with nature. Now, the reality is that over the last 200,000 years, our human Homo sapien brains haven't really changed. But 98% of our time, of evolutionary time, was spent in kind of scenes like these cartoons here. And many of the things that we see here are still absolutely fundamental to our appreciation of good, healthy, calming, secure spaces. Things like shelter, warmth, security, access to food and water, a sense of society, access to food and fuel. And all those things are still fundamental to what we believe to create good spaces. Essentially, I know that we've been through the Industrial Revolution 170 odd years ago, but the evolutionary lessons that we've evolved with are still there fundamentally. And there's an interesting idea called the savannah theory that suggests that we're genetically predisposed to very quickly recognize landscapes that can help us survive and thrive and even flourish. So when we look out at a scene like this, and if we imagine that we're standing on a hill with a nice, safe, warm, secure cave behind us, for our evolutionary ancestors, this is a scene that would have made us very good and relatively calm and relaxed, because we knew that everything we needed to survive and thrive was right here in front of us. We've got lots of natural light flooding down. We've got fantastic views, a sense of prospect overlooking this rich savannah. So we can see potential prey. We've got fuel and food. We've got water. We can see potential predators. We've got building materials. Everything we need is right here. So we feel pretty good about ourselves. Now, you may think it's kind of a bit of a distant leap to go, yeah, well, savannah theory, yeah, we're not cave people anymore. But when I show you this next slide, and this is, for me, probably the most kind of toe-curling, cringeworthy architectural slide I've got, you'll realize just how powerful the savannah theory is, because the next slide is perhaps one of society's most successful spaces, spaces where people spend incredible amounts of time. They take their families to, they spend their money in. I present to you the pinnacle of British design. It's Westfield Shopping Centre. Amazing. But immediately you'll recognize lots of those savannah theory ideas. Just look up to the roof. We've actually got lots of natural light flooding down. We've got artificial clouds. We've got these biomorphic forms of structure which represent trees. We're looking down into this shopping mall, as we often do, onto this kind of savannah plain. We've got biomorphic representations of water. We've got food. We can see potential prey. There are predators out there as well, I can promise you, but they're kind of hiding. And even a sense of excitement and prospect as we follow this disappearing horizon line with the roofscape, taking us down to to actively engage us and want us to explore these spaces. So these ideas are incredibly important, and experienced designers recognize that we can interact with these ideas to create enticing, exciting spaces. But how do we incorporate biophilic design principles into the built environment? Well, there are essentially 6 key principles that we as biophilic design consultants like to introduce and investigate for people. So the first one is views out onto dynamic forms of nature. And many of you may have seen a view kind of similar to this. A beautifully architecturally designed space, views out onto trees, natural light flooding in. You can see a little bit of water and sky out there. You've got vegetation. When we look at nature, it very simply calms us down. It creates a sense of calm and relaxation. But of course, our offices aren't in spaces like this, so it's important to recognize the opportunities that exist within any exterior or interior space, recognizing that simply by surrounding ourselves and looking onto nature, recognizing the Heraclitean patterns as the wind moves across the leaves on this ivy wall or across the tree, that creates a calming and restorative benefit, allowing people to recuperate from stressful activities. Natural light is absolutely fundamental to our creation of better spaces, healthy spaces. But of course, enormous numbers of us work in urban areas, masses of us work in spaces with no natural light at all. And natural light is absolutely fundamental to us because of this. This is a chart of our circadian rhythms. Now what we've got is, around the outside, we've got our human reaction, we've got a 24-hour clock, and the changing colour nature of light. Now, our circadian rhythms are basically our body's reaction to periods of light and dark across a 24-hour period. And our circadian rhythms impact onto our mood, behaviour, and even our hormone release, affecting our body's secretion of melatonin and serotonin, which affect our sleep-wake cycles. Now, we all know when our circadian rhythm gets out of sync. If we've flown long haul, we feel exhausted and we're kind of just out of sync with the natural daylight. Now, what we see here is that basically, this is kind of the average day. We've got kind of like 6 o'clock, 7:30, your body wakes up. We see that melatonin secretion stops at about 7:30. We start to wake up. We see a yellow quality of light. As we move through the day towards midday, the light becomes bluer and cooler, and we start to see best coordination, fastest reaction time. As our evolutionary forebearers might have seen, this is the time we're waking up. We've got to go out there, do a bit of hunting and killing, come back to the cave with some food. So our best coordination, fastest reaction time, things are getting a bit serious by 3:30. By 5 o'clock, we've really got to get out there, drag home the kill, and by 6:30, we've got to be back in our nice, safe, warm, secure cave to eat our food and to get ready for the next day. So as we move through this day, our body's behavior, mood, and hormone release are greatly affected by these subtle changes of light. The problem is, nowadays, is we spend 90% of our time indoors. Many of us spend time inside under a single colour temperature of light. And so we don't have this kind of subtle variation of cues for our bodies to kind of move through the day. Now, it's fine. We all know we can overcome 1 or 2 nights bad sleep or a sense of tiredness. But if we have a prolonged exposure to artificial light, and it's quite easy to imagine in the middle of winter that we might get up and it's dark, get onto the tube, it's dark, we go into an office, there's no windows, come out at the end of the day, and it's dark again, our exposure to these subtle changes in light have completely gone. But what happens when we don't get right amount of sleep because our circadian systems are out? Well, it has all sorts of physical, mental, and cognitive issues and impacts onto the body. So memory loss, impaired moral judgment, severe yawning, hallucinations, grumpiness, my wife tells me, apparently, increased heart rate variability, and then there are some sort of deeper, longer-term impacts, such as the risk of diabetes and depression. So making sure that your staff and your people have a good exposure to natural light is absolutely fundamental. Professor Russell Foster, who is a professor of circadian neuroscience at Oxford University, suggests an interesting idea of a photon shower for those that don't have exposure to natural light. And a photon shower is an intense burst of natural light first thing in the morning to help set up and reset the circadian system in the beginning of the morning and to reset it for the rest of the day. The next principle is incorporating natural patterns, materials, and textures. And of course, because we're working in urban areas, it's highly likely that we're not going to be surrounded with a sense of nature. But what research has shown us is that by incorporating natural colours, patterns, and textures, then we can start to have some sort of physical recuperation that we can benefit from it. It's not as good as the real thing, but it's good. Now, what's interesting about this is actually, I'm working at the moment with Interface. I'm a biophilic design ambassador for them. Now, Interface take a biomimetic approach to their carpet tiles. They take inspiration from the natural textures and patterns that we find in the natural world and incorporate them into carpet tiles. So this biomimetic approach literally copies the forest floor, age-worn cobbles or weather-worn materials like this, little patches of grass. And what this does is it's a relatively easy way to start to incorporate a natural-looking material that's always in your periphery vision. So in some respects, it's the easiest first step towards a biophilic interior landscape. But of course, there are lots of other ways that we can incorporate natural materials into the interior environment, be it natural stone, timber, materials that age well like leather, using digital printing. This is the Urban Retreat flooring range by Interface, and incorporating real plants. The fourth principle is thinking about the quality of air. So rather than just think about air quality, it's also about the way that air moves across the skin. Remember, we have the ability to perspire, which has always been our human advantage in nature. So having air moving across our skin keeps us feeling more engaged. But incorporating actual plants actually helps us to modify CO2 levels, temperature and humidity levels, and also remove toxins from the environment. The fifth principle is remembering that we're human beings, that we have an emotional landscape throughout the day, and what's important is that we create a physical landscape that allows us to move between these different emotional states. So remembering that we will both have periods of intense concentration, but it's equally valid that we need spaces to sit back out of the main circulation routes to restore our mental, physical, and cognitive energies and to get back to being in our optimum position. And the last principle is a sense of prospect. The idea that we need to create a sense of openness, a sense of free movement through space so that people can orientate themselves and not feel threatened, but also to create an exciting series of spaces, kind of much like we saw at that Westfield space. So I'm just going to run you through a couple of different ideas of some of the benefits that happen when we introduce biophilic design into the workplace. And I'm going to start off by talking about education, because what I'm increasingly seeing is those at the forefront of workspace design, those like Google, Apple, and Amazon, are not talking about workspaces or offices, they're talking about campuses. So they're starting to see a correlation between the idea that people are going to work to learn, to be productive, but also to learn. So this idea that education and the workplace is starting to merge is quite an interesting idea. This is a very simple little school. It's by Jesp and Cook Architects. It's in Oxfordshire. And it starts to sort of demonstrate some of those biophilic design principles. And there's been an amazing amount of research about the benefits of nature in environments. So when we introduce nature and light into education spaces, students can learn by 20 to 25% faster in natural daylight. Absenteeism can go down and test results can be improved. So these are results from education research papers, but many of these statistics are very, very similar to those that we're finding in the workplace. This is a lovely school by Tectonics Architects in France, the Paul Chevalier School. And you see that wonderful sense of nature being incorporated in all sorts of different areas. When students look out the window, they're not just daydreaming, they might be restoring their mental energy, looking onto this wonderful poppy field. You see a lovely example of natural light flooding into this space and being bounced off this green carpet. And also classrooms filled with timber. There's amazing research that demonstrates that when we have classroom spaces with timber walls, heart rates can actually be reduced by 8,600 beats per day. So it actually goes a long way to improving acoustics and also reducing stress and heart rate levels for those inside the spaces. But it's when we think and talk about the design of the workplace that biophilic design really comes into its own, because we can start to measure some of those tangible benefits that happen. So when we introduce biophilic design into the workplace, we can alleviate stress, we can reduce absenteeism, but on the positive side, we can also increase productivity, creativity, and reported sense of well-being. Now, there's lots of ways that we can do this, and it can be that there are sort of the relatively low-hanging fruit ideas that you can start to kind of move spaces around and rearrange offices. In this space, you'll see that they've arranged desks, working desks alongside the window. So good access to views out, but also natural light coming in. They've used that darker central space as a meeting space. And if you look up here, it looks like an artificial roof light. Well, it looks like a roof light, but actually if you look at it, this is clearly in an urban area. This is actually an artificial roof light that has a sense of nature about it. And they've taken that idea and brought it right into the heart of the space to create a kind of atrium feel within this workspace. Incorporating natural plants is absolutely fundamental, and it's a fantastic design opportunity for me as a designer. But it has the opportunity also just to bring a sense of delight to people. And quite often when people see an image like this, it kind of brings a smile to their faces. And importantly, bringing plants into spaces has been shown to increase productivity by 15%. Natural textures, colours and patterns. Again, creating sensual spaces is absolutely fundamental. You can imagine that working in a white pristine box would be good for a while. There would be a sense of clarity. But after a while, the human body starts to crave sensory input. So having subtle sensory changes in the flooring, like we see here with Interface's carpet range, having sensory inputs through what you're feeling on desks and chairs is absolutely fundamental to creating a space with a greater sense of mindfulness and the sense of moment of being right here in the place that you are at. And creating recuperative spaces as well. This is two different approaches to recuperative spaces. On the bottom left, we see Microsoft's approach, which is a very individual, solitary sense of recuperation. Somebody sits in this little white egg chair, got natural light, natural textures, I've got this wonderful green wall. By contrast, we've got Apple's approach in their new headquarters in Cupertino in California. Now what they see is that biophilic design and a sense of nature can be used as a catalyst to get people talking, to meeting, to kind of help ideas spring to life. So a wonderful sense of sociability, natural light, trees, and that sense of context and bringing people together around nature. Now, when we look at the workplace design, obviously we have the opportunity to investigate the human benefit that biophilic design can bring. Now, the World Green Business Council recently brought out some research that demonstrated some amazing kind of ideas. Now, traditionally when we talk about sustainability, we're talking about a carbon-centric approach. We're talking about how we measure carbon, whether it's embedded or active carbon, or the amount of gas, electricity, and water that we use, quite literally, within a building. Now, the reality is, when we talk about this carbon-centric approach, it represents just 1% of typical business operating costs. By contrast, I'm sure you well know, 90% of those typical operating costs are in staff, be it salaries and benefits. So if we can start to realize even marginal benefits to productivity, to creativity, to reducing absenteeism, we have the opportunity to really realize some tangible financial benefits to the workplace through biophilic design. Now, a new survey carried out by Interface that looked at 7,600 people over 16 countries, so a really comprehensive survey across the world, came up with some really interesting statistics. Now, what it demonstrated was 85% of us now work in urban areas. And the shocking thing is, 47% of those people have no natural light. And it's higher in England. This is a global number. 58% have no plants. Now, I've got to say, I'm not a massive carnivore. I don't eat a lot of meat. But I wouldn't eat meat produced under these conditions. As a result, I decided I'm going to almost totally stop eating office workers from now on. So what is it that people really want? Well, 44% said they want natural light, 20% said they wanted indoor plants, 19% said they want quiet working space, 17% were just plain greedy with a view of the sea, and 15% said they wanted bright colours. And what happens when we introduce some of these ideas into the workplace? Well, kind of amazing statistics. 15% reported a higher level of well-being. That's self-reported. So that means they're feeling better. They're going to be more engaged. They're going to be more likely to turn up. And in fact, they're going to be 6% more productive and 15% more creative. So these are really interesting figures. And what a novel idea that design can start to realize the evidence that is being presented to us in this research. Rather than just sticking its finger in the air and going, oh, you know, yellow and brown are really this year's colors. This is an evidence-based approach to design that introduces nature into the workplace to reconnect people and to help improve productivity and a sense of well-being. So just a quick little case study. This is the Genzyme headquarters in Massachusetts, designed by Bainish and Partners. On the face of it, it looks like a kind of glass curtain wall building overlooking a lake. But actually, if you think about it, this provides the opportunity for lots of natural light to flood in and equally views out onto trees and water. When you look at a cross-section, like a cut right through the building, we'll see some of the magic of the benefits of this building. So this is the elevation that we just saw with views out onto that lake. There's a big atrium here with heliostat mirrors that follow the sun and bounce natural light down into this great big atrium space here and actually bounce it off a reflective chandelier in the middle, allowing light to bounce into all the different workspaces. When people are sitting here, in their periphery vision, they've got views of nature at different mezzanine levels, and there's a sense of airflow, natural air that flows up through the building. Now, 18 months after the building was completed and reoccupied, they carried out a staff survey. 75% said they had a greater sense of well-being, and 88% said they had a closer connection to their colleagues. So when we start to kind of think, well, what happens when you feel closer, when biophilic design acts as a catalyst to get people talking, then ideas can start to cross-fertilize, and an organization can start to realize the benefits that different departments can bring together. This is the interior space. You remember some of those savannah theory ideas, the sense of prospect, looking down onto spaces, trees and water, little pools of natural light. You can just about see the reflective chandelier here, and the sense that there's lots of trees at different levels, so we have that sense of it being like a vertical garden. And what we're seeing is that those at the vanguard of workplace design are understanding the benefits that biophilic design can bring, not just in increasing productivity and creativity to reduce absenteeism, but also as a means to attract the best staff in the war for talent. Because, quite frankly, who's going to want to work in a windowless basement office with no plants when you could be arriving at the new Google headquarters, the endless loop in Cupertino, and work in a space like this, walking into work, feeling like you're valued, feeling like you're engaged, with a wonderful sense of light and appreciation of nature, having the opportunity to cross-fertilize ideas with your colleagues in this amazing garden. So this is Apple's headquarters. This is Google's new headquarters in Mountain View, designed by Heatherwick and Partners. I mean, you can see the attention to detail in connecting people with that sense of nature. Lots and lots of natural light flooding in through this translucent roof, a wonderful sense of greenery all around. The buildings are almost incidental in that they're movable and can be rearranged in different spaces. But just how wonderful to work in a space like this. Now, lots of the ideas that I've talked about today are currently being written about in the Human Spaces website, which is an online portal for all things health and well-being. Look at health and well-being and biophilic design. You can also download the Human Spaces report, which is where I got some of those statistics from. If you want to come and talk to me afterwards on the interface stand, this is the report itself. It's a fascinating study. It's actually very readable. A lot of these reports become pretty heavy, and it's quite easy to doze off unless you're sitting next to some plants. This is a really very readable report, and it's a great introduction to the benefits that biophilic design can bring to the workplace. If you've had good experiences of being in nature in the workplace, this is an open source website, so please do feel free to offer up reports or blogs or to comment on some of the articles in there. I've written lots of case studies, and there are some fantastic psychologists and other designers writing about all aspects of health and well-being and nature in the built environment. So that's more or less it. Biophilic design is a lot more than just that design cliche of bringing the outside in. It's a science and style that's backed up by 30 years of psychological data and research that demonstrates that when we improve the human connection with nature, we can increase productivity, increase creativity, reduce absenteeism. We can create more contented and engaged people to work with. What's essential is that we get all the people involved in the creation of the built environment together. So we have the human resources, we have the facilities managers, we have the financial officers, we have the designers, of course. We get those people together to realize these benefits, to have a common goal, to realize and understand that biophilic design is an essential component to the creation of better spaces. It's better for people, it's better for profit, and it's better for the environment. Thank you very much.